Li Mei is handstand kicking the opponent's head off during this Fatal Friday video. Good morning, good evening, whatever time of day it is for you. Welcome to this thing that I do called Thor's Entertainment. I am Thor. And Fatal Friday is a series where I look back on videos where I casually went into the Kombat League to try pulling off a unique finisher like a Brutality or a Fatality. I would do that with whatever character I wanted to in Mortal Kombat 1, and the character of the week is going to be Li Mei. And I am highlighting her heads or tails brutality. That is the brutality version of her forward 4-3 combo. Just hold the up button whenever you defeat the opponent with that combo, and the finisher should activate. I have Li Mei paired up with the Stryker cameo in this video. When this was recorded, I was rotating between cameos for Li Mei. When looking back at the recordings, I have Li Mei paired up with a bunch of different cameos like Stryker, Frost, and Cyrax. Those are just off the top of my head, so there may be more. Frost was probably the best of those pairings for me, but I never really settled into which cameo I liked the most, and I am pretty confident that other cameos would have been better. My random opponent in the Kombat League ended up being somebody using Geras in the cameo Kung Lao. This had me groaning a little bit in real time. Now there is nothing wrong with the character Geras. Nothing this character has in his toolkit really bothers me. The dread I was having about having to fight Geras was just because of a lack of familiarity. I do not play as Geras myself, and overall I have barely touched the character, so I do not personally know how to use him or how other people may want to use him. That leaves me in a position where I don't really know what I am looking for whenever I have to fight against somebody using Geras. Fortunately, at least in my experience, there are barely any people using Geras. I very rarely encounter people using this character in the Kombat League. In fact, I'm pretty sure this is the base roster character I have seen people using the least. This really did not help me out whenever it came to not knowing how to counter this character, because I can somewhat figure out a plan the more I run into a character and see how people want to use them. I did not have that luxury with Geras though. And since no one was really using Geras, there wasn't a sense of urgency to go into the practice mode and start learning how to punish his attacks and stuff like that. So why does my lack of Geras knowledge matter for the video that I have going on in the background? Well, it directly impacted how I approached this fight. You'll see me try to keep my distance from Geras for most of the rounds. The logic was I may not know how I need to block or what I need to punish, but I am way less likely to screw any of that up if I'm just keeping Geras away from me. So zoning became the main plan that I had. I personally do not care for heavy zoning gameplay, so I do not love that this became my best option to try and win this fight, but it was the best I could come up with mid-match and I just tried to make it work. And it did kind of work because I ended up getting the finisher that I wanted and getting favorable results overall in the set. Still, since it was a projectile heavy fight, there weren't a lot of really good combos, and the rounds, they kind of went on for a pretty long time. This may sound familiar to how I was describing last week's video with Homelander, because I said very similar critiques in that video. So when it came time this week to pick a Li Mei video and I saw this one, I thought it made sense to do these videos back to back.
Prevail.
Brutality! Li Mei wins.
And that is it. That is the heads or tails brutality for Li Mei. It may have taken infinite amounts of projectiles, but eventually Geras was weak enough to where I felt confident to go for the combo and try to go for the brutality, which ended up working out for me. These mostly zoning videos are some of my least favorite recordings. I would like to think that all of my finisher videos have some entertainment value, but these are just not as interesting to me compared to the ones where we have a bunch of exchanges of long combos, fatal blows, and just stuff like that. That got me thinking that maybe I should give my personal rankings to my finisher videos and just use that as a way of deciding what the release order is going to be. Because the ones that I would rank kind of lower and the ones I would rank higher, they have a lot in common with each other. And because of these similarities, we would end up with kind of a collection of videos. Like we would have a collection of these keep away videos, a collection of the more one-sided battles, and a collection of the really close matches where both sides were playing really well. Just stuff like that. So I am giving that a try. I might just end up changing my mind, but it sounds pretty good to me right now. It definitely sounds better than me just picking somewhat randomly like I have been doing. So we may end up seeing some other keep away videos in the near future, but that is to be determined. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get back to this fight and talk about the state it is in, because I have not really been talking about it too much at all up to this point. The game plan was mostly just to projectile my way to a possible victory and not let Geras get too close to me, and be in a position to exploit my lack of matchup knowledge. Although occasionally Geras would get close enough to me to where I would have to try some close combat, I would occasionally get some small combos, but I would never really be able to convert to anything that did major damage, even though the opportunities were definitely there. I don't know what it was, I guess because I was just running away so much and not trying as much for the combos. My timing may have just been a little bit off, but as a result, anytime Geras got close to me, at best I was doing a few hits or a throw, and that was about it. Still, that was good enough for me to win the very first match of the set. And here in the second match, things were getting kind of close. Geras had already won the very first round, but here in the second round, I had a pretty large life lead and Geras was already well below 30% health. So it looked like I was in good position to win the second round and take this to a third and final round, which is pretty much exactly how the previous match went as well. Things overall against this person were pretty close. Oh, and you may see me doing this in the background and I have not really talked about it too much. I did mention that I was doing a bunch of projectiles, but you also see me lifting up the lanterns that Li Mei can use for air control. They can also be used to extend combos if you knock your opponent into the air and into those lanterns. But for my purposes here today, that was mostly just to prevent Geras from being able to freely jump in and get close to me. If he wanted to get close, I wanted to use the lanterns to ensure that he basically had to dash forward, which at the very least meant he was probably going to take some chip damage from having to block the projectiles while trying to get closer. So that was the idea behind using all these lanterns throughout the fight. Now I ended up doing this so much that Geras realized he could just duck underneath my projectiles, and he also got pretty good at timing his jumps around my lanterns and not running into them. So my plan was not working as well as I had originally wanted it to. At first it was doing alright, but the more you do something, the more likely it is the opponent is going to pick up on it, and then start figuring out ways around it. And that was the situation I found myself in because Geras did do exactly that and found himself with a pretty large life lead in this third and final round. I was already below 30% health and I was trying to fight my way back from what was basically a 90% versus 30% deficit. And very fortunately for me, I do manage to make a pretty good comeback. We both end up well below 30% health, and I caught on to the fact that Geras was constantly ducking, so eventually I just dash up and go for the fatal blow, hoping he wouldn't realize it was an overhead and it would hit him. But he summons Kung Lao, he throws the hat that does enough damage to kill me, and he takes the second match. Oh, and on top of that, he ends up taunting me. I would normally be a bit annoyed about that, but honestly, after just constantly trying to zone him out, this is one of the few times where I almost don't blame him. So just to recap, I have been basically zoning every single round of every single match up to this point. That led to me winning the very first match of the set, but then Geras ended up winning the second one. So now we are tied 1-1, taking us to a third and final match that would determine the winner. Overall, the set was a really close one. The previous two matches both came down to a third and final round, so it was pretty dead even. Like I said, we were tied 1-1 in the matches, and even if we were to count the rounds, we were tied 3-3. In this final match, it was close again. Both of us ended up below 30% health before the round was over, and for both of us to end up in this situation where we had critical health, I had to deviate from my plan because it was no longer working. So for basically the first time in the entire set, I went after Geras and I had him cornered. I wasn't sure what Geras could do, but I figured if I just kept the pressure going, maybe it would not matter. So I just did everything I could to make sure Geras just stayed living in that corner, and it worked out pretty well. But I just barely ended up taking the first round of this final match. Barely or not, I found myself in a situation where I needed to just win one more round and I would win the entire set. However, I would be deprived of seeing a definitive winner. I have no idea why or how, but my opponent, they ended up disconnecting. I'm not sure if they got sick of the zoning and just quit, or maybe something crazy happened. Maybe a rat chewed through their Ethernet cable, I don't know. But regardless, the game informed me that my opponent left, and I was just sitting there without a definitive winner. Actually, considering that he left, I'm not exactly sure how he got away without triggering a quitality, but they did. Weird. In any case, I guess I can count this as a win since my opponent left. Even though it was tied with both of us winning one match each, I suppose after that last round, I would have ended up ahead, because I would have ended up winning 4 rounds versus my opponent winning 3. So whether you want to count the rounds or count him quitting, I guess we can call this a win. Anyway, let's get back on track. Since I did not get the chance to go for the brutality again, I will be sure to show the one time that I got it in this set at the very end of the outro, that way we can all enjoy it one more time before we part ways on this Fatal Friday. So yeah, we got my least favorite Li Mei video out of the way. I don't necessarily think it's bad, but I'm just not as entertained by it as I am the other videos I have of her finishers. So I am really looking forward to those. And there's one finisher very specifically that I'm really wanting to talk about because it's one of my favorite ones because it's just a really goofy one. But we will get to that on a future Fatal Friday. For now, thank you for checking out this video and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to check out the other things I have on the Thor's Entertainment channel. I have plenty of other Mortal Kombat 1 finisher videos just like this. Those can be found under the Fatal Friday playlists. I have those separated based on years, just whatever year I was releasing the videos. And I have also played through a bunch of other video games as well. Besides the Mortal Kombat stuff, I've also played through games like the remakes of Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, the remaster of Crash Bandicoot, and the remaster of Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, feel free to check it out. Regardless though, thank you for checking out the video for this long. Take care, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.
Justice won't prevail.
Brutality! Li Mei wins.